In the last few lectures, we have been exploring humanity and the Earth's distant past, specifically our connection with the planet Venus and various waves of souls or divine humans that came from Venus to the Earth around the time of Lemuria or Mu. This next sequence is going to explore the various teachings from different traditions that describe this phenomenon, these beings from Venus, that describe the divine humans from the Venusian sphere that came to the Earth to initiate humanity long ago. Before we begin, and because this topic is a little tricky because it deals with beings from different densities, there are a few foundational understandings that should be observed before we go any further. The first one is that Venus is actually the higher aspect of the Earth, and that is how it needs to be observed primarily. Not as a physical form or a physical body or physical planet, but as the higher aspect of the Earth. In fact, this is how all planets should be observed, and all fixed stars should even be observed, as extensions or related to our own planetary scheme. Venus can be understood perhaps even more correctly as Earth's developmental future, which is why Venus is shown in anthroposophical teachings as a future incarnation of the planet Earth, or that the Venusian stage is a future condition of the planet Earth. Thus, Venus is not an alien world. It's not extraterrestrial, but rather another expression of our own Earth. It is the interaction with the Earth's higher expression that actually creates an evolutionary impulse in humanity. The second foundational piece of information is that Venusian, or these great beings from Venus, are what we would consider divine humans or angelic humans. And humans on Earth are a direct expression of the angelic hierarchy, just like the Venusians are an expression of the angelic hierarchy. So, what we're looking at here when we're talking about Venusian beings is really beings that are representing a force in the angelic hierarchy. And human beings themselves are also part of that angelic hierarchy. And so between them, there is a form of divine creation and divine metamorphosis that is occurring, as they are both part of the spiritual hierarchy or forms of the spiritual hierarchy themselves. One of the issues with working with this information is that individuals will classify the divine humans incorrectly and say that they are aliens, or say that they are alien gods, or sometimes you'll see the fallen angels being called Anunnaki, and this is an incorrect classification. The Venusians are part of our own developmental scheme. Not only that, they incarnated into humanity during the Atlantean epoch. This means that they are humanity. The incarnation or ensoulment of these divine humans is part of how humanity evolves. Venusians that were not able to ensoul are called fallen angels. This is why Lucifer is also called a fallen angel and also associated with the planet Venus. And these fallen beings form part of the devolutionary impulse or the inorganic impulse on the planet. When we understand this dynamic, humanity's interaction with the spiritual hierarchies, we are prepared to enter into conversations that deal with interplanetary concepts. If we do not understand this dynamic, our minds will not be prepared to understand the cosmic level of spirituality or the process of human initiation in the solar system. So in this kind of discussion, we have to understand the spiritual hierarchies or the angelic hierarchies and humanity and the Earth's role in that overall scheme. Let's take an even deeper look at the divine angelic humans from Venus. where were they mentioned in classical esoteric literature? 9,000 years ago was the dawn of our current post-Atlantean epoch. Atlantis was cast to the bottom of the sea, and humanity splintered into different tribes and escaped to different corners of the world to begin again under a new kind of consciousness. Now, as the high culture of Atlantis became a fading memory in our mind, a great civilization rose in the east, called the Indian civilization. It is said in the mystery traditions that after the fall of Atlantis and the end of the Atlantean epoch, the highest initiates from Atlantis traveled to India and began what is known as our post-Atlantean epoch, or our current epoch. This means that the wisdom of the East is really a continuation of Atlantis or Atlantean mysteries, or a new expression of the Atlantean mysteries and culture packaged for a new time, our time. At the cradle of the great Indian civilization stood 7 great individualities, 7 masters called the Holy Rishis. These Rishis could also be seen as spiritual masters or the leaders of civilization. The 7 great ones are also called the 7 holy Kumaras, and their soul essence is said to have incarnated through Venus to the earth. The 7 Rishis, or 7 Kumaras, are an expression of Venus, which in turn is an expression of the solar logos, or the sun. These 7 Kumaras are also called the sons of the sun, the solar fathers, the solar Pitris, or in Anthroposophy, the Elohim. In the Eastern tradition, this solar lineage that manifests on the earth through Venus are called the Dhyani Buddhas, the Agnishvattas, the Manasaputras. There's actually many names across various different mystery traditions that describe these same 7 beings. And these 7 beings make up an important part of the initiation structure for humanity and on Earth. Why Venus? Well, on Venus in particular, the heavenly man, or the heavenly body, was formed. This mystery is revealed in the imagery of the now perfected human form on the pentagram. The pentagram, of course, referencing Venus, or the 5-petaled rose of Venus. This symbolizes that an important part of the human being was first developed on Venus by the divine angelic humans in the spiritual hierarchy. And then once that consciousness and form was developed, it was then considered ripe and thus passed down or cast down to the earth. This divine human form, or the template of the higher human that Venus gave to the earth, is also associated with the 5th initiation of humanity and the earth, or the stage of spiritual initiation where the form is first spiritualized through self-awareness, or the development of the I. This is the first flickering of the soul. Thus, Venus and the great divine humans from Venus provided developing humanity with their evolutionary spark, their I, which leads them to develop their heavenly body, or their solar form, or eventually the Atman body. The 7 sons of the sun, or the 7 holy Rishis, or the 7 Elohim, are what we would understand as solar beings from Venus, or the divine angelic humans from Venus. They are the primary embodiments of the 7 rays of creation, or the 7 kohans, and make up the foundation of the lodge of the masters and adepts, or the human individuals who have themselves progressed in their spiritual initiation beyond ordinary consciousness. In esoteric Christianity, one may also see these 7 great sun spirits from Venus as the 7 Christs, or the 7 solar spirits of the Earth scheme. Each solar spirit, or Christ, is to perform a great initiation, or a great deed for humanity. The great teachers of Venus and its counterpart Mercury are mentioned in Rudolf Steiner's Anthroposophy. In Lecture 7, in the lecture series titled The Spiritual Hierarchies, in this lecture Rudolf Steiner unravels the mystery by evolving our understanding of the relationship between the divine beings from Venus and humanity in the Lemurian epoch, the Atlantean epoch, up until present times. He even goes into detail about how the consciousness and wisdom of these beings was transferred from person to person, epoch to epoch, through the preservation of one's etheric body. In Lemurian times, men walked the earth who had only a physical and etheric and astral body. But these were not men who could think in the sense of today, or who could develop humanly in the sense of today. And now something remarkable happened upon the earth. Those men of Lemuria who only had a physical, etheric, and astral bodies were helpless. They could not help themselves. They did not know what they had to do on earth. From heavenly regions, the inhabitants of astronomical Venus first came down to the earth to help these helpless beings because they had a certain relationship to the physical body. They were enabled to send their light through and ensoul the physical body of the first inhabitants of the earth. Thus we find some among the Lemurians who passed among the mass of humanity in quite a remarkable way. They had a different physical body to the others. A man so particularly graced had not an ordinary physical body, but a body ensouled by a spirit of Venus, a spirit of personality. Because that man of ancient Lemuria moved about with the spirit of Venus within his physical body, he had a powerful influence on all his surroundings. Such Lemurians did not appear different from their companions externally, but because a spirit of personality, a spirit of Venus, was translated into their bodies, these selected individuals acted suggestively, in the highest sense of the word, upon their surroundings. Today, there is nothing to compare to the obedience, the reverence, and the awe that was felt for them. All the attempts at colonization which were undertaken to people the different regions of the earth were led by such beings, into whom a spirit of personality had descended. No speech was needed, for there was no speech then. No signs were needed. But the fact alone that such a spirit of personality, a spirit of Venus, was there sufficed. And when it was held necessary that large masses of people should be led from one place to another, those masses simply followed without thinking about it. Thought did not exist. It only developed later. Thus, the spirits of personality came down to earth as spirits of Venus in ancient Lemurian times. And we can say that the distinctive features of these messengers from Venus, such as the human countenances of that time could wear, signified something quite new with regard to the whole universe. If we take their cosmic significance, it reaches as far as Venus, and their actions had a meaning, an influence on the whole concatenations of the solar system. They could lead people from one place to another, for they knew the connections that can only be known by those who are acquainted with the surroundings of the earth, and not only with the earth itself. The development of humanity progressed further. The necessity arose that archangels, or spirits of astronomical Mercury, should act upon the human development. These were now obliged to ensoul and give life to that which had dwelt below on earth. This was principally in the Atlantean times. At the time, the archangels, or spirits of Mercury, descended upon the earth and inspired the physical and etheric bodies of the men of that period. So, in Atlantis, there are also men who were not outwardly very different from the others, but whose physical and etheric bodies were ensouled by an archangel. And if you remember what we said yesterday, that the archangels have the task of directing whole nations, you will understand that a man who had an archangel within him could actually give to the whole Atlantean race those laws which he received directly from heaven. The great leaders of old Lemurian times, when it was still necessary to act much more generally, were ensouled by spirits from Venus. Those who, in Atlantean times, had to direct smaller masses of people were ensouled by archangels. Those who are called the priest kings of Atlantis were in truth Maya, illusion. They were not at all what they outwardly appeared to be. An archangel lived in their physical and etheric bodies. He was the active regent. If we go back to Atlantean times, we can seek out the secret stations of these leaders of mankind. From these hidden centers they worked. There they investigated the mysteries of space. One might ascribe the name oracle to what was investigated, and commanded from these ancient Atlantean places of the mysteries, even though this word originated in later times. The name, place of the oracles is quite suitable to these centers of instruction and government. From them, the great teachers worked, so that others might there be trained to become priests and servants of men. It is important that one should know that there were men in ancient Atlantis who in reality were archangels, bearing an archangel incarnated within their physical and etheric bodies. If such a man had been seen by someone endowed with clairvoyance, the latter would in fact have seen a physical man, and behind him an enormous figure rising above him and losing itself in indefinite regions. The figure of the inspiring archangel. Such a personality was of a twofold nature, as if behind the physical man, growing out of indefinite space, was the inspiring archangel. When such men died, the physical body was destroyed according to the laws of Atlantis. The physical body, which had been naturally ensouled by the archangel, dissolved, but the etheric body did not dissolve. There is a spiritual economy which demands exceptions to the general truths expounded by Anthroposophy. We say and in general it is correct, that when a man dies, he lays aside his physical body, and after a certain time also his etheric body, which dissolves with the exception of an extract. But this is only generally the case. There is an enormous difference between an etheric body, like that of the initiates of the Atlantean oracles, which was permeated by an archangel, and an ordinary etheric body. Such a precious etheric body is not lost, but is preserved in the spiritual world. In the first place, the great leader of the Atlantean oracles preserved the 7 most important etheric bodies of the 7 great initiators of these oracles. These ether bodies were originally built up through being inhabited by archangels who, at their death, naturally returned to the higher worlds. Such things are certainly not preserved in boxes, but according to spiritual laws. The Atlantean initiate of the Sun Oracle is no other than Manu, who has been often mentioned and who guided the remnant of the Atlantean nation over to Asia to establish the new post-Atlantean civilization, our civilization. He took this little handful of people with him and led them over to Asia. He trained the people through generations, and when the 7 most adaptable ones had been bred and educated sufficiently, he wove into their individual etheric bodies the substance of the 7 preserved etheric bodies which had been woven by archangels in the ancient Atlantean times. Those 7 who were sent down by the great leader to lay the foundation of the first post-Atlantean civilization were the 7 holy Rishis of ancient India. They bore within their etheric garment the etheric bodies of the great Atlantean leaders who had themselves acquired those bodies through the archangels. Thus, the past, the present, and the future acted in harmony. Those 7 men who are called the holy Rishis would have appeared to you as simple people, for with their astral body and their ego, they had not reached the height of their etheric bodies. All that they were capable of was interwoven within their etheric bodies. There were certain hours during which inspiration acted within their etheric bodies, and then they spoke of things which they themselves could never have known. Then from their lips flowed that which had been inspired into their etheric bodies. Thus they were simple, plain people when they were left to their own understanding. But in the hours of inspiration, when their etheric body was active, they spoke of the greatest mysteries of our solar system and of the whole universe. Thank you very much for joining me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to keep these teachings going. I am fully supported by my viewers. If you like this information, please consider also making a donation on my website. And don't forget, I also offer live Q&As, forums, and an entire community online to discuss these things further. And all of those links will be posted below. Thank you.